Hello there, Tolkien fanatics. Welcome back to another video, and I have for you a surprise. As I said in this channel before, I am working on lore videos, and I finally have come up with my first topic for a lore video, and it's going to be one that I think might be a little controversial, but I've got lots of facts to back it up. So let's get into this. So for this video, I've decided to talk about who is the biggest hero during the War of the Ring. So there's a lot of debate out there about how Sam, good old Sam, coming from number 3 Bagshot Row, with defending the defending the name of the old gaffer whenever he goes into combat with his trusty frying pan, is the true hero to the War of the Ring, as he helped to push Frodo along and keep him on path so that he could make sure that the One Ring was destroyed, while also being, for a short time, albeit just a single day in, Tolkien universe, however long that may be. I don't think we ever were given a true specific time frame. He was, though, for one single day, the bearer of the ring after Frodo was captured at Cirith Ungol from being stabbed by the poison of Shelob. So a lot of folks would agree that Sam was potentially the greatest hero. However, I want to make a case for another hobbit. And this is a hobbit that I think a lot of people notice, but don't think a lot about. No, I'm not going to say Bilbo, because everyone's probably going, okay, who the hobbits? Well, Frodo would be the obvious one, but, he's probably not going to be controversial. And Bilbo, maybe. But no, it's not Bilbo. Let's talk about a hobbit who, for instance, was maybe a bit young, a bit goofy, caused a little bit of chaos, but at the end of the day, was, in my opinion, and I have some facts to back it up, the bravest and most responsible, well, not most responsible, but we'll say one of the biggest factors pushing the War of the Ring towards its eventual conclusion in the defeat of Sauron. And that would be none other than Peregrine Took. Yes, I know. I can hear you now going, what? Pippin? What is wrong with you? I've got some facts, okay? So, let's think about this. Pippin, we are introduced in Farmer Maggot's field, along with Merry, stealing crops, which Sam, of course, immediately responds to, going, you guys are stealing from Farmer Maggot's crops again, haven't you? And if you listen, they were actually, Merry and Pippin, stealing those crops to bring to Frodo. So even before the events of the War of the Ring, they were already showing their devotion to Frodo. Now that's just for the movie. In the books, that didn't happen so much. They more got caught by Farmer Maggot, and there's a whole scene with that. But I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit between the lore of the book and the movie for this. The movies are probably more what I'm going to look at, just because of the fact that those are a good visual reference, and they'll go along in key with the visuals I provided for this video. But I will bounce back and forth with the two of them. So let's, fast forward. Pippin and Merry sneak into the Council of Elrond, declare themselves loyal to Frodo in the quest to destroy the ring, and, of course, being loyal to the ring bearer himself, which I already said, Frodo. And Elrond, although a little, we'll say peeved, for lack of a better word, that they had basically, not photobomb, but spy bombed his secret council and forced their way, albeit without much true resistance from Elrond or anybody else, onto the Fellowship. So moving along, nothing really happens much as the Fellowship leaves Rivendell and travels along. They're discovered by the Crabine of Dunland, which was thanks to the elf eyes of Legolas that they saw in time, although it didn't matter because they still got spotted. So they decided to try and go over the pass of Cahadras, which also failed them due to, in the book, Cahadras having sort of its own spiritual mumbo jumbo, kind of like maybe a Maiar of some sort had decided to make his presence known by potentially inhabiting that mountain and casting aside all travelers who would try and go during that time. Now, that would not be an evil mire. If anything, it'd be more like Tom Bombadil just kind of bouncing along in life with no true aims at stopping anybody in particular, just everybody in general. So then they decided to go through the mines of Moria. And this is where our story truly begins. So Pippin, whilst in the tomb of Balin, is doing what Pippin does best and exploring around because he's bored. In the movies, he touches the arrow, the end shaft of, I believe it must have been an orc or goblin arrow, and that causes the head of the dead and decayed dwarf to fall down the shaft, followed by the rest of the body, followed by the chain, and followed by the pail, down the well shaft. In the books, he does something similar, only instead of knocking something over, he throws a rock. In both cases, the end result was the same. The goblins are awakened, and so comes the Balrog, and Gandalf is defeated, sacrificing himself, so to speak, in order to defend and protect the Fellowship, and then coming back as Gandalf the White. And we'll come back to that in a little bit, because that's a little bit important. But let's follow along with Pippin. So basically, for the rest of the movie, he doesn't do, the rest of the Fellowship, he doesn't really do much. He gets his nice shiny dagger from Galadriel in the book and in the extended scenes of the movie. And then he helps defend Frodo with Merry by drawing the Uruks away at Amon Hen. And then, unfortunately, Boromir meets his end trying to defend them, which, kudos to Boromir. Definitely made up for it in the end there, even though it cost him his life. I shouldn't laugh at that, but it was sad. Sean Astin. Wow, Sean Bean. Everybody saw that coming. We know he was going to die. Game of Thrones. Spoiler! Helped push that along in his legend as well. There are plenty of movies out there, by the way, and TV shows where he doesn't die. Go look them up. I guarantee you'll find at least a handful. I can think of 2 off the top of my head. But back on track to the more important thing. Pippin gets captured by the Uruks along with Merry, and they are being dragged along, and Merry is, quote-unquote, pretending to be sick, but he's actually truly hurt as he's been hit upside the head rather viciously. So Pippin draws the attention and, of course, the ire of Ugluk and helps Merry get some medicine, so to speak. Now, whether this is just purely from the movie's perspective, in the books, they both were given this orc drought. But you could say he does help save Merry's life there. If untreated, maybe Merry doesn't recover from that nasty head wound. No, I'm not saying I'm a doctor or anything, but head wounds can definitely be very bad for you. And maybe that orc drought, with the little bit of magic that's sprinkled in there, albeit evil magic from Saruman, did help keep Merry going. So in the books, it's a little bit different, because Merry was indeed not well. He was hurt as well in the books. I don't think it was specifically said what he had. But he runs aside, off track, while the Uruks are resting, and drops his cloak clasp, which was one of the leaves from Lothlorien. And this was important because it helped the 3 hunters, being Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, realize that Merry and or Pippin, of course we both know both were alive, were indeed alive and calling for help, so to speak. So moving along, Eomer and his riders come and slay the Uruks at night, and Merry and Pippin escape into the woods. Okay, now we're going to kind of deviate more towards how the movie portrays it than the books, because in the books they talk to Treebeard and awaken him, which is important, but it's less specifically said, I think, in the books who was really there and helped push Treebeard towards gathering the Entmoot and charging down to destroy Isengard, because for the majority of that time they spent it with Quickbeam, who had already decided. But in the movies, he helps the Ents come to realize that they need to take on Saruman at Isengard with a little bit of deception. The Entmoot had already finished. They had decided not to do anything. Merry was very upset about it, very distraught, very angry. probably a little bit, let down as well, feeling that they could have really turned the tide of the war if they'd taken out Isengard. So Pippin's like, we have the Shire, we'll be okay. And there's good old Treebeard, Fangorn himself, taking the hobbits back to the edge of the forest so that they can make their way back to the Shire. When Pippin's like, oh, hey, why don't you head south, by the way? And Treebeard's like, what? I'll take you to Isengard. And Pippin, using some reverse psychology, goes, well, of course that'll be exactly what we need. We'll be near Isengard. Saruman will have no idea we're there. We'll slip right past. And Treebeard, being a tree, goes, well, yeah, I guess that does kind of make sense. And decides to, proceeds to descend south towards Isengard. Which, of course, Pippin, I believe, all along knew what they were going to see, having climbed the trees and seen the destruction that Saruman had wrought on the edges of the Fangorn forest. So, when Treebeard gets there, he calls the other Ents to, and the sacking of Isengard, I can't think of the word, commences. There we go. Sorry, guys. I have a little script, but I'm trying to freeball this as much as I can without reading, because otherwise it would be very boring and monotone. I'd be like, so Pippin did this, and Pippin did that. Yeah, so I've got little spark notes here, but trying to come up with the sentences. As you can tell, I'm not very good with this, so I do apologize. Maybe I'll get better. Probably I won't. If you don't like it, go ahead and leave now. I won't be hurt feeling, or whatever you want to call it. But if you'd like to see more of why I think Pippin is great, continue along with me. So the sacking of Isengard commences. Saruman is basically overthrown. And as the victors of Helm's Deep come, they find Merry and Pippin enjoying a few well-deserved comforts on a field of victory, as they so say. And Gandalf breaks Saruman's staff, basically, strikes him down, removes him from power, and in doing so, casts the Palantir down. Now, in the movies, of course, he is shot by Legolas and falls down, and is impaled lovingly on that very nice water spike on the watermill. But the result is the same. The Palantir is seen by Pippin, who goes and retrieves it, which Gandalf takes. And again, we're going to come back to Gandalf. Trust me. So he looks into the Palantir after the feast and the festivals of not only mournment but joy over the victory at Helm's Deep. Although it was probably mostly a Pyrrhic victory due to the fact that they lost so many people. And Pippin being curious, as he's already basically sicked a Balrog on his companions, now decides to go sick Sauron on his companions by looking into the Palantir. So while this may have been what could have been perceived as a big downfall, it actually helped reveal the plans that Sauron had to attack Minas Tirith. Now this gave Gandalf the ability to ride to Minas Tirith and rally the defenses, basically confront Denethor and say, dude, what are you doing? And of course we know that Denethor is distraught and his mind has been broken, because in the books we know for a fact that he has been peering into the Palantir, and Sauron has come to realize this and used his will to slowly break Denethor's. And Denethor was a great man. Yes, he's just a quote-unquote just a steward, but the stewards were of a royal lineage from Numenor. They weren't as great as the kings of Numenor, but they did come from Numenor themselves, and they did have greatness amongst them. I mean, Boromir, when he was first seen by Frodo in the books, was described as being a lordly man. So, a great and powerful lordly man. So there you go. It's right there. And that's exactly what the stewards were. Not as long-living, not as mighty in their deeds, but still very great men. And unfortunately, Denethor's mind was just broken. And it could happen to anybody who's, not Aragorn. So, Pippin is there. He's there when the Battle of Pelennor Fields takes place. And in the movies, I don't know if this was spoken of in the books. I can't remember. I don't think it was. But in the movies, he basically saves Gandalf's quote-unquote life. Because as we know, Gandalf being a Maiar is, he's eternal. He's not going to die. But his mortal body can perish. And so he saves Gandalf's life in the movie, again, when the siege towers come to the first level and assault the wall, and troops get out. And one lucky orc is about to cast down the wizard, the white wizard, when little Pippin draws his tiny little dirk, because it's probably nothing more than that, and stabs the orc, protecting Gandalf, saving his life, and basically essentially keeping the defenses of Minas Tirith going. Because let's be honest, at that point, Gandalf was the only thing keeping those defenses going. His pure will was egging the warriors of Minas Tirith on, egging the defenses, keeping them going when all hope seemed lost. So he definitely was important there. Then he goes on to return to the Citadel and sees Denethor in his craziness going, yep, I'm just going to burn myself and my son alive. There is nothing that is going to stop me, and no one can say otherwise that he is dead. So he gathers his men, gathers his son's dead body, notice the air quotes there, and goes to the halls, the Tombs of the Kings, I believe, to burn himself alive. Pippin tries to stop him. Denethor rejects him. So he goes and grabs Gandalf, and they return to save Faramir. And this is very important because after this, Faramir recovers, and at the same time, so is Eowyn, who was hurt by the Black Breath on the fields of Pelennor when she struck down the Witch King. And the two of them heal and recover together, and they end up falling in love, of course, and getting married. And then this happening allows the union between Rohan and Gondor to become ever more solid, seeing as Eomer inherits the crown after Théoden dies and becomes king of Rohan. So his greatest treasure being his sister, who he, in the books, was very distraught over when he thought she was dead, finding her lifeless body, so to speak, on the fields of Pelennor. So their union, Faramir's and Eowyn's, helped completely solidify that bond between Rohan and Gondor. And of course, he became the Prince of Ithilien, which became, a whole forest of flowers and all of that. It rose to whole new heights and prominences. So, yeah, Pippin was very instrumental there, I think, in really pushing. Now, here's the other reason that I'll back it. So he did all this stuff. He helped cast down Saruman with the help of Fangorn, who's Treebeard. He helped save basically the only guy keeping the defenses of Minas Tirith going, which gave the time for the Rohirrim to get there. And then, of course, when it comes to it, he was one of the first ones to charge at the Black Gate after Aragorn, for the movie's sake. So, circling back all the way to the first thing I mentioned, one of the first things in the Fellowship, when he sicked the Balrog on his friends, you could say that Pippin and Gandalf are closely intertwined. And some would even say, well, Gandalf did all of these actions. Did he? Or was Pippin secretly behind all of it? Because Pippin summoned the Balrog. And while, yes, Gandalf did die, his coming back was basically Pippin's doing, because of the fact that the Balrog and Gandalf fought mano a mano, Maiar versus Maiar, and allowed the Valar to bring Gandalf back in all his glory. Not only that, but because of the fact that he came back, he was able to free Théoden's mind as Gandalf the White, being purely what Saruman was supposed to be. Saruman the Wise was supposed to be the great wizard, and so the Valar imbued that on Gandalf the White, who was then able to overthrow Saruman's hold on Théoden's mind, which allowed Théoden to rally his people to Helm's Deep to effectively stop the army that was coming, the 10,000 Urks that were going to wipe out the world of men from Rohan moving into Gondor. So if Gandalf isn't Gandalf the White and cannot cast down Saruman of many colors as he is at that point, then Rohan literally just rolls over and dies when Saruman attacks. So not only does he do that, but he goes and brings back in the movie Eomer, in the books, Grimbold and Erkenbrand, as we know. Actually, no, it wasn't Grimbold. I think it was Erkenbrand. Yeah, it was Grimbold. Yeah, he brought Grimbold. And Erkenbrand. One of the two. I know he brought Grimbold at the least. I think Erkenbrand was brought as well. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read that part of the book. But we know it wasn't Eomer. So he brings the help and the resources of the other regions of Rohan to bear at Helm's Deep to continue to smite down the army, and that turns the tide at Helm's Deep. So there you go. He rallies the troops in Rohan to defeat the Uruks Isengard at Helm's Deep, basically meaning that now the world of men is protected from Isengard. Now they simply need to worry about taking out the second of the two towers, that being, of course, the Tower of Barad-Dur, where Sauron is at. So then you can go forward and go back to where I was talking about, where the companions meet Pippin and Merry at Isengard, and where Gandalf breaks the staff of Saruman and casts him down, which of course leads to the Palantir being thrown down from the window, and that allows and Gandalf takes that, which allows Pippin to look into it, revealing the plans. And after he brings the plans forward, Gandalf does, and alerts Théoden that, hey, this is going on, he whispers in Aragorn's ear, look to the black ships. And now this is strictly from the movies. I can't remember. In the books, Aragorn never really goes back to. He never does. He never goes back to. Oh crap! What's it called? Meduseld. He never goes back to Edoras. There we go. And so he just goes straight to. Man, why am I forgetting these names? He goes back to not the Dwarf, Dunharrow. There we go. And I mean, of course, the twins help him. But in the movies, he pushes Aragorn towards the black ships, telling him that they're coming, telling him he needs to stop this assault coming up the Anduin to basically pincer the forces of men between the orcs of Mordor and these ships coming up the sea. So he does that, and then of course I've already mentioned multiple times that he rallied the defenses of Minas Tirith and kept that fight going while Rohan mustered their forces in order to come. So, yeah, all of that being said, I think Pippin is probably the greatest hero of the War of the Ring. Because his actions, while maybe seem clumsy, had more overt consequences in the long run. Of course, his biggest action being that of sicking a Balrog on his companions once again, which allowed Gandalf to, quote-unquote, die and become Gandalf the White, who he truly should have always been. So that's my reasoning and thoughts behind why I think Pippin is the greatest hero in Middle-earth during the War of the Ring. So let me know what you guys think. Am I crazy? Did I make a compelling argument? Who's your greatest hero in Middle-earth during the War of the Ring? Maybe it is Pippin. Maybe it's Sam, who I already mentioned. Maybe it's somebody else. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear back from you guys. Thank you all for watching and sticking with me through this. Thanks for all the subscribers and the likes and the views. I really appreciate it. Hoping to keep this channel going. Looking forward to getting my next lore video up there in the future. As always, guys, take care, and I will see you at the next Tolkien Fanatics video.